I'm Mike AD, and welcome to the Delta League Podcast. And this week, it's week 3 of the regular season, and the action continued. Now, let's start on Monday night, where Denver was hosting Phoenix and Vancouver in an afternoon game. And Denver wins it. Denver 41, Phoenix 25, Vancouver 16. Well, see, after Saturday's games, word came from the league's disciplinary committee that Denver captain Mark Pinnell had tested positive for opioids. He's going to be thinking long and hard about his substance abuse for the next 4 weeks while he sits on the sidelines. Now, before this one even got started, Phoenix coach Vasily Smelly fell ill and had to check himself into the hospital. Assistant coach Terry Fuchs took over. Crisis averted. Now, fans were more than an hour late getting into the building for the game due to an anti-ice rally blocking the entrance to the building. Perhaps Vancouver should have been deported. They were horrible. Now, this game featured a bachelorette party that spiraled out of control when the Phoenix girls had way too much to drink, and when that happens, 3 things normally happen. 1, you become an annoying ass that tries to dry hump London Chatbert. 2, you become a sobbing heap of miserable flesh. And 3, you get your asses thrown out. Check. Now, the mysterious locker room bandit strikes again. Phoenix was trapped in their dressing room during the second intermission. Still, 0 leads on who this guy is. But he gets around. Now, last week, Marquette Weaver came out saying that he wasn't going to wear the Pride jerseys. Now this week, Orcas player Kofi Dominguez came out and said the same thing. I wonder what his teammate Romeo Da Rosa had to say about it. He's openly gay. Now, Delta League is at its best when all the players hate each other's guts. Now, Emil Safran didn't take long to cause trouble. This guy retired 4 weeks ago. Now he's jumping on the court. I don't think he understands that when you retire, this isn't pro wrestling. You can't keep coming back. Now, anyhow, he ended up on the court because Phoenix assistant captain Jackson Truman decided he wanted to be on the court too, because being scratched means that you should risk your career on frivolous nonsense. Anyhow, Truman is getting a black card, and some expensive paperwork just came in for Safran and the Sky franchise. Now, for Denver, leading the way it was Vince Howlett, Samson Sartell, and Telly Sykes with 7 goals each. For Phoenix, it was Nick Hoja finally doing something. 6 goals. And for Vancouver, it was Kofi Dominguez with 10 blocks. And in the end of this one, it was Denver who picked up the 4 points. Phoenix, 2 points. Vancouver, nothing. Now, let's move on to Chicago. Wednesday night, they're hosting Dallas and Memphis. And in this one, a real close one. Chicago wins it. Chicago 34. Dallas 33. Memphis 29. Now, Carmelo McCall is back in the sin bin. damn, this guy seems to be in the news every week. In this game, he took out Dallas player Lo Ang, and he's going to be gone upward of 7 weeks with an MCL tear. The result was a yellow card, but this could have been much, much worse for McCall. But they get worse for Chicago because assistant captain Ivan Goss is an idiot. He's got a strained groin, and he goes and he does what all these players do. He gets on the court and he goes after McCall. Black card. Add that to the long list of fuck-ups that seem to plague this team season after season. Now, for Chicago, leading the way, it was Star Palmer with 8 goals. For Dallas, it was Will Curry and Nathaniel Mansfield with 5 goals each. And for Memphis, it was Bianca Watson with 7 goals. And in the end of this one, Chicago picks up the 4 points, Dallas 2 points, Memphis nothing. Now, let's now move on to Saturday. Oh boy, to Philadelphia, where they host Boston and New York. And in this one, New York picks up the victory. New York 36, Philadelphia 20, Boston 17. Now, earlier this week, Boston player Eduardo Steven was caught with a suitcase containing a large amount of marijuana, and he was detained and later arrested at the airport in Boston. In the state of Massachusetts, possession or intent to distribute is a Class C felony and has a potential 5-year prison term. It appears his Delta career is over. Now, Boston Revolution player Dudley Kashdan has checked himself into rehab. Apparently, it's for recreational drug use. Once his suspension clears and he has his stint in detox, he should be ready to join the land of the living by week 5. Now, there was some rough stuff in this game with Boston player Konstantinos Papadopoulos and New York player Chucky Sponga getting yellow carded. Could have been a shitload worse, but then Mike Blythe got involved. He throws Sponga to the ground. The ref black cards him. Steve Fotopoulos tries to stop the fight. He bangs into the ref. The ref already had enough of this shit and yellow cards him. Blythe just loses it. The whole team had to restrain him, but then Philly player Jermaine Jardetsky runs off the bench with the intention of peacekeeping? I think not. He goes after Sponga, goes after Blythe, but Blythe breaks loose, ragdolls the ref, throwing him to the ground. This is just horrific. I mean, Boston just digging themselves an insurmountable hole with a backhoe. Now, a hell of a lot of cardboard was doled out in this exchange, but, it has to be one of the most penalized matches in the history of Delta League. More on this incident later. Now, there's a contingent of Shred fans that were very critical of this team. Not sure if they're the serious ones or the delusional ones, but all I can say is you're in a playoff position. Hold tight. The management will get to work trying to sabotage your team soon enough. Now, for Philadelphia, it was Harlequin Butcher with 18 blocks. And Ray Rogers with 5 goals. For Boston, it was Vasily Rollins with 5 goals. And for New York, it was Mohamed Carnasale with 9 goals. And Carmen Thorson with 5 blocks. And in the end of this one, New York picks up the 4 points. Philadelphia, 2 points. Boston, nothing. Not even a tea party. Now, let's move on now to Montreal, where the Maelstrom are hosting Toronto and Detroit. Oh, God. Detroit wins again. Detroit wins again. Detroit 29, Toronto 20, Montreal 18. Now, word out of TO is that Towers captain Travis Valencia wants out of Toronto. A few weeks back, he said that he wouldn't mind if he got picked to go to an expansion city, and some Toronto fans took this very badly. I mean, he's been a subject of harassment when he's out in public, and he's also received death threats. Add another great player to the trade deadline. Now, Montreal didn't make it out to the court on time because their locker room was flooded by a fire alarm going off. All their gear and uniforms were totally soaked. Montreal wore their very rare white kits instead. Maybe that's why they came out so flat. Now, this game was markedly cold. At least that's what Ravi Cutter says. Nobody else seemed to complain. Maybe that's why he scored 0 goals. Now, the game was made more entertaining by official Bobby Szymanski being totally intoxicated. Now, it's very fortunate that Delta uses a 2-ref system, and Pavel Neshevich took over with very little difficulty. I understand that Delta is a crazy sport, but now even the officials are going for rehab. Jesus. Now, Rock player Hussein Cohen got shown the highlighter pen for a very questionable call, but Detroit just couldn't resist the urge to rush the ref. The result is the whole document has been highlighted. Everyone got carded, including Cohen, who already had a yellow card. That means Cohen is gone. And after 2 black cards already this year, he's gone for 3 games. The league has been very strict on this issue. If you start berating refs, mobbing refs, create an aura of perceived intimidation, the officials have been told to scan the whole roster and ask questions later. Now, for Montreal, it was Gus Partenza with 10 blocks. For Toronto, it was Barb White with 6 goals. And for Detroit, it was Wilt Davola with 7 goals. And in the end of this one, no matter how improbable, Detroit gets the 4 points again. Toronto 2, Montreal still got nothing. Fucking 0. Christ, is that funny. Now, let's move on now to Miami, who's hosting Washington and Atlanta. And in this one, Washington wins. Washington 34, Miami 24, Atlanta 21. And there's no frickin' notes for this game. All the cool stuff was in the Philadelphia game. Now, for Miami, it was Marquette Weaver with 7 goals. For Washington, it was Octavian Womack with 7 goals. And Angel Malloy with 7 blocks. And for the Inferno, nobody did jack shit. So in the end, it was Washington picking up the 4 points. Miami again 2 points. And Atlanta, boom, 0. Now, let's now move on to the last game of the night. Salt Lake City hosts Seattle and Los Angeles, and Seattle shows no quarter. Seattle 50, Los Angeles 38, Salt Lake City 23. Now, Swarm player Britt Crummy did not play in this game because her wife gave birth to the couple's first child. Now, LA player Carla Winters was out vacationing with her family and participating in some water skiing, but she hit the ramp awkwardly, crashed into the dock, and fractured her C2 vertebrae. Now, the good news is she'll survive. The bad news is, even though she could regain partial mobility, recovery from this type of injury is never complete. It could take a year. It could take 2 years. It may never heal properly. So, returning to play may risk permanent paralysis. Just horribly unfortunate and a bad end to a career of a promising player. Now, just when you think Delta fans couldn't get any worse, some enraged SLC fans jumped the barricade and went after an injured player, Rusty Searle. I give up. I give up. Honestly, our fans are assholes. Put that on a t-shirt. Now, well, Tommy Anastos was cited for using a homophobic slur against Fallen Angels player Marty Hagar. The official did not like the language and booted him in the second period. Now, not before Hagar punched Anastos in the face. Then Bobby Sheffitz gets involved, also tossing the ball at Anastos' head. You see, over time, the population of Stupid Town becomes infinite. The league reviewed the tape of the slur and upheld the suspension after seeing the footage. It's going to cost him 1 game for a violation of the verbal morality statute. Now, as far as LA going into the stupid business afterward is highly questionable, but what do you expect? Delta League players. Now, Swarm player Reggie Joag Dev must have had too much of a problem with losing, because after this game, he was seen hanging out with Seattle players at a club. These people do not learn. Teams need to institute a professional distance policy while the regular season is still in progress. Now, for Salt Lake City, it was Alessander Harris with 7 goals. For Seattle, it was Rob Donoff. Delta League record, 16 goals. 16 fucking goals. And Vlad Millet, no slouch, 10 goals. And for LA, it was Jerome Jalbert with 7 goals. Right, there goes the alcohol. Now, in the end of this one, Seattle, no surprise, gets the 4 points. LA, 2 points. Salt Lake City, nothing. Now, let's move on to the standings. At the top, we got Seattle and Denver, 12 points each. Then we got Detroit, 11 points. Chicago and Washington with 10 points each. We got New York and Toronto with 8 points each. We got Philadelphia, Phoenix, and Miami, 6. Then we've got Boston with 5 points. We got Atlanta and Dallas with 4 points. Then we got Vancouver, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake City with 2 points. And Memphis and Montreal still with jack shit. Now, let's move on to the goal leaders after week 3. Up at the top, Rob Donoff, Seattle, 38 goals. Star Palmer, Chicago, 32 goals. Cameron Baptista, Chicago, 25 goals. Then we got Mohamed Carnesale, New York, 23 goals. Laurie Moss, Seattle, 21 goals. Elix Henderson, Washington, 19 goals. Wilt Davola, Detroit, 18 goals. Vladimir Millet, Finn Werley, 17 goals each. Corbin Womack, Tommy Anastos, Travis Valencia, and Valdemar Odette and Perry Brackett with 15 goals each. Now, let's move on to the block leaders after week 3. Coming up into the lead, Jamie Ekstrom, Atlanta, 25 blocks. Harlequin Butcher, Philadelphia, 23 blocks. Alan Adam, Memphis, 17 blocks. Chip Chiozzi, 15 blocks. Romeo Da Rosa, Mike Brenton, Angel Malloy, 14 blocks each. Then Vladimir Millet, Gus Partenza, Mendoza Middleton, 13 blocks each. And Kofi Dominguez from Vancouver, 12 blocks. Then there's 3 players with 11 blocks each. Now, let's move on now to league news. And the word on Phoenix coach Vasily Smelly, who was hospitalized before the game even began today. It's food poisoning. It's almost a guarantee he will never go to that restaurant again. Now, official Bobby Szymanski has been suspended for 2 weeks and told to get help with his substance abuse issue. Due to this incident and the incident involving B.B. Kerr last season, it's only a matter of time before the league officials will be subject to routine drug tests. Some people just ruin it for everybody. Now, the league wants to implement a policy which forbids players from opposing teams from hanging out together while the season is in full swing. Now, the union did not respond well to this. In fact, they told the league where to go. And teams are free to have certain policies, such as curfew on game days, certain facial hair policies, and a dress code when they are traveling to and from games, but the league is not permitted to infringe upon players' individual rights such as freedom of association, which is a constitutional right. Now, the Mike Blythe incident. The commissioner slammed Mjolnir down at the speed of light. Blythe is gone for 17 games. 17 games, which means he's done for the year. I mean, including potential playoffs. Now, if they don't make the playoffs, this suspension will bleed into next season. Epically stupid. Just a crazy loss of composure by the 3 teams here. They just exercised a total loss of impulse control. Embarrassing. Now, let's move on to the mailbag. Matty V. This year's crop of players that are soon to be ushered out of town is reaching a epic level. It's not even trade deadline yet. Who do you think will make the biggest impact in their new city? Now, I look at Toronto and I see Ravi Cutter, Gabriela Davignon, and Captain Travis Valencia, and I think, wow, what a gut shot this must be. You can't have Ravi and Gabriela on the same team, and Travis is going to be a hard move, especially a player at that level. I think Ravi is the easiest player to trade here, and the only good trade is a 1-for-1 equal trade for Valencia. Now, this is going to be hard, but he's the best player on the table. A guy like Rhino Montalban from New York is a good trade skill-wise, but Montalban has other issues like discipline and injury susceptibility. But I believe the best trades are to deal him to Denver for Alexa Saragosa or Salt Lake City for Alexander Harris. Those are trades I would make. Now, let's move on to real Piero Barone. Here, due to the stiffs on the Maelstrom, I had to sell my Bugatti dealership. maybe we should trade Partenza. Maybe a package deal with some draft picks will benefit this team more. This team has 3 elite players: Edwin Milligan, Gus Partenza, and KC Snapper. Last season, they seemed to have a lot more promise. I mean, Milligan, who gets hurt and suspended way too often. Gus Partenza, who scores 13 goals one week, then cries a river the next. And KC Snapper, who seems to be doing a lot of snapping loads into his hand. I mean, perhaps this team is very overrated. There's a lot of parity in this league, and coming out of the gate so flat will handcuff this team when the final points are counted. Now, the problem with trading Partenza is that he could go from elite to a godlike player, and then he blows an ungodly load of goals all over your ass, and you look ridiculous. Or, next year, he could show up 350 pounds to training camp, so you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. I wouldn't trade him at all. You learn more from losing than winning, and this kid needs to learn. Now, here's the last one here. Sexy Gus Augustus. Sexy Gus Augustus. Looks like the anti-LGBT sentiment has come back to this league. What do you think the league should do to these players who don't get the message? Now, Darcy DeMello put his foot down last season when this nonsense started, and seeing 3 or 4 guys sent to the big house scared the shit out of these players. Now, Marquette Weaver spoke his mind this past week. Yep, it's catching on, because it's safer in this political environment to express those views and than it was just 8 months ago. However, the man in the ivory tower has not changed. Expect the same penalties for the same infractions. You can't say Darcy has been a weak commissioner whatsoever. In fact, he's been a very consistent commissioner when it comes to these punitive measures. Now, based on this small number of players voicing their disapproval, will teams forego these Pride nights, or will they say, we're doing it and to hell with the consequences? Now, the league has decided to leave it up to the teams to determine whether they participate, and if they do, to what degree will the team recognize the gay community. Now, some teams are doing a one-night commemorative jersey to mark the event, while others will commemorate the event with patches on the jerseys. Now, some of the teams are just not doing it. Now, let's move on to next week's games and predictions before we bid you all adieu. Now, starting on Monday, when New York hosts Montreal and Washington. I know I said a couple weeks ago that the Maelstrom were going to turn this ship around. But based on the fact that they've drawn New York and Washington means the pain is going to continue. New York strikes back with a big win here. Now, let's move on to Wednesday with Philadelphia hosting Miami and SLC. Now, that faithful Wednesday in August, the date where Miami walked off the court with their first win in the history of the franchise. Given my luck, Miami will lay a turd and SLC will win again. Now, let's move on to Saturday with Memphis hosting LA and Toronto. I mean, LA is looking better, but they got 4 players out this week. Memphis hasn't given me any reason to have faith, so I'm taking the Towers to get the win that they should have got last week. Now, let's move on to Boston, who's hosting Detroit and Atlanta. And who would have thought that after 4 weeks, Detroit wouldn't have lost a single game? Based on how badly Atlanta has played and the setbacks Boston has suffered, no matter how improbable, Detroit will be undefeated after 4 weeks. Now, on to the second last game here. We have Seattle hosting Dallas and Denver. The battle of the 2 remaining 3-0 teams. Denver captain Mark Pennell is out. Seattle also has 2 players out. So if Denver is going to deliver a killing strike, it's this week. You can bet your ass it won't be Dallas. Now, Seattle looks to complete the season with a clean sheet. But stranger things have occurred. And knowing all these things, I'm still taking Seattle for the win. And the last game here. Vancouver hosts Phoenix and Chicago. Chicago is another team that seems to find new and interesting ways to blow off their own foot with a shotgun. Now, I think if you're a betting man, this is the closest game of the year. I would pick a 2-way win or a 2-way loss. Regardless of the adversity Chicago has put themselves and their fan base through, I think they're the team in the middle, and Vancouver possibly sneaks out the back door with a win here. We'll see you all next week, where the action continues and never seems to stop. See ya.
This is Delta 2.